So I got a message recently from someone on Instagram, and she said, "Hi, you don't know me, and before today, I didn't know who you were." Rude. I just happened to see an Instagram post of you where you share your story, and it inspired me. I've had a hard life, and I don't want to go into details, but abuse has been part of more than 20 years of my life. I always wanted to write a book, inspire others, share the lessons that I've learned, and how I survived. I have started many times, but I get stuck. I don't know how to share my story, and I'm afraid of what people will say, specifically those who did the abuse and deny it. Do you have any tips for me? And can you help me? Now, that is so relevant. It's so consistent across the board when people reach out to me, whether it's on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, wherever. And it always comes down to, usually, I want to get my story out there. I want to share it, and then the but is followed by fears. It's followed by my family members don't believe me, or is followed by the fear of the unknown. If I put my book out there, it just is fear, 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 which makes sense because as human beings, we're driven by fear in some way, shape, or form. Fear is always going to be there. And when it comes to something like our story, which is really the most vulnerable thing that we have, is connected to us, is connected to our DNA, is really at the end of the day the only thing that we own. You know, we come into this world and our story started, we end the world and that's where our story ends. And sure, our story can live on if you want to look at it from that angle too, but our story is the only thing that we really own, and it's the only thing that we can. And actually, saying that, a lot of people don't believe that they own their story, especially when you've been through something like abuse. It's like abuse specifically, any form of abuse. There is someone that's the abuser, and there's a power sort of shift, and they essentially own you and they control you. And let's just say the abuse stops and you part ways with said abuser. A lot of times you go on to live a life where you haven't stepped back into your shoes of power. You haven't regained control. And especially if that person's dead in the ground, they will still have control until, which is why we're here, which is why I do what I do. And that's to lead the way, and it's to empower people. Hey, listen, if you've been through some shit, it could be abuse, it could be a miscarriage, it could be cancer, it could be anything that is traumatic to you in your life and in your story, doesn't need to define you, you know? And with what this person here is basically saying, like, let's go to this first question. Well, her first point. So, I've started many times, but I get stuck. I don't know how to share my story, and I'm afraid of what people will say. Let's cover that point first, about being afraid of what people's going to say. That old chestnut. You know, when I published my book, up until that point, I couldn't give a single shit what any member of my family said. I couldn't give a single shit what the people that I was living with at the time. I was renting a room in a shared house, and I couldn't give a shit what any of those guys said. I literally didn't give a shit, and that has, don't get me wrong, been one of my strengths throughout the years. I don't remember a time where I built that as part of myself. It's just, as far as I can remember, it's just always been that. I just don't give it. To be honest, I do think the underlying sort of reason for that is daddy issues. Got a lot of daddy issues. And, you know, my dad always impressed his opinions on me about what I should and shouldn't do. And it just got to a point where I broke. I was like, fuck you, you know. That didn't end well for me. But when it did get to a point, though, when I published my book, I then did care. But it was specifically, I was fearing the reaction from the family of the abuser, my step-granddad. I had spoken to them. I had when I was a child, but I don't remember that. So as far as I was concerned, I hadn't spoken to them before, never met them. They might have their own opinions, and they might see my book, they might see my story go out there into the media, and then boom, something's going to happen. You know, they're going to ask me to take it down. They're going to talk shit to me. They're going to, I don't know, maybe try to take me to court. Who knows? I don't know. Right. So I was fearful of it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'd done it anyway. I was like, I don't, you know what? If they want to take me to court, fuck it. You know, let's go. If I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down swinging. I don't give a shit. Right? Because this is my story. This is my truth. Okay. And I was very aware. Here's the thing. Here's what we got to be aware of is that when it comes to putting our story out there, whatever story that is, our story, the story that we've lived, when it comes to putting our story out there, that truth, there will be people that will say something negative. It could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be the abuser, it could be the family of the abuser, or a lot of times it's complete strangers. Strangers always have an opinion, and they're always going to react to what you've said through the lens that they're wearing, of which they see the world through, so based upon their own experiences. So you've always got to take it with a grain of salt. But what it does always come back to is the fact that, listen, it's outside your control. Everyone's opinion is outside your control. So if we come back to that specific sentence, I'm afraid of what people will say once she puts her story out there, I understand that fear. I've had that fear. You watching this have had that fear, or do have that fear, or will have that fear once you get around to actually doing it. But at the end of the day, we can't control what Tom, Dick, and Harry says, whether it's good or bad. Can't control it. I remember seeing this video reel once of Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V, and he's like a business personal development guy. And he was like, I get a lot of good things said to me. And he goes, and I never sort of soak it in. I just allow it to bounce off me. I don't sit there and embrace all the good stuff and let it inflate my ego and make me feel good. He goes, because if I'm open to the good, then I'm also open to the bad. And I remember when I heard that, I was like, oh, shit. I said, that makes an insane amount of sense. An insane amount of sense. And I really sat there and thought about it. And looking back from then to me now, I will pretty much say that I'm in a similar boat. Like when people say, Perry, you've saved my life, which I've had countless messages from people saying that. Inside of our community, so we've got two communities, which are linked underneath the YouTube video. Inside our book, Powerful Books community, where we help people turn their life story into a powerful memoir. Countless times on that, we have calls nearly every single day, coaching calls, group calls, and people say about how much their life has changed without writing a book. Now, it's nice to hear that, but you best believe that a couple of seconds after them saying it, I'm not thinking about what they just said anymore. And that's because that if I'm really open to that, then I'm also going to be really open to someone saying, Perry, your program was a piece of shit. Perry, your video, you share your story too much. Nobody cares. Perry, you deserve the abuse. Perry, nobody believes you. Perry, whatever. And that could really crush me. But I can hear all that shit all day long and it's cool. I don't give a fuck. I know what is true. And that's that. And it comes back to sort of protecting yourself because you have to. And when it comes to putting your story out there, it's one. So let's sort of wrap this up into points here that's actually digestible. The first point here is to understand that you can't control the actions of other people. Don't be open to the good. And you can take in the good because it's nice. Yeah. But then continue to move forward, share your story again, help the next person. You know what I mean? Always be sort of in that pursuit of, okay, who else can I help? What else can I do to move myself forward on my personal development journey, my healing journey? What else can I do to move myself forward in my career? What else can I do to move myself forward on carving out the life that I deserve to live? And then what else can I do to help someone else? Always be in the pursuit of that purpose. That's the pursuit that I've lived in nearly my entire life, and I would never change it. That's why I've never been burnt out whilst chasing this purpose. It's impossible because I believe that we've all been put on this planet for a specific reason. And if we are able to act that out and be part of something greater, like, we're honored to do that. That's fantastic. So when it comes to getting your story out there and you're fearing of what people might say, comes back to understanding, all right, that may happen. I might be more than likely, it's going to be a potential reality that someone's going to have something to say, a family member, a friend, a stranger. But you know what? Cool. I'm okay for that. I'm ready for that, because one, I can't control what their reaction is going to be. So I need to get into bed with that and just accept it. Two, because you know what? If somebody has something bad to say, then my story is not for them. My story is for the person that needs to hear it, because they're living in a world of dark, and they need to hear my story, because I need to be that lighthouse to guide them back to shore, back to safety. That's who my story is for. And it kind of leads into the second point, which is there's always going to be fear to get your story out there, to break the silence, or continue to get your story out. There's always going to be fear behind that. So it's not about trying to get rid of the fear. It's about making the purpose behind what you're doing and why you're doing it greater than the fear. Once the purpose is greater than the fear, you then become aware of the fear, and then you're like, I'm aware of the fear, but I just got to do it anyway. But I don't see any other option. I have to. It's not like I can and I can't. No, I need to do. I am going to do. I'm aware of the fears. I might set up some things for me to do to bring me back down, or to walk out in nature to ground myself before or after, to make sure that I'm okay. But I'm still doing it. And it's getting quite matter of fact with that. Because what's the alternative? If you're watching this, I'm shit scared to share my story, and then a week goes by and you're still shit scared to share your story. 5 years goes by and you still haven't shared your story, and then I say to you, why? And you say, because I'm scared. Well, how long are you gonna fucking go on saying that you're scared? Okay, and this might sound a bit harsh, but this is just how I am. Okay, I love you, and this is why I'm telling it to you as a matter of fact. How long are you gonna go on living your life in fear? No one else is going to, you have to push yourself out there, look at fear in the face, say, fuck you, I'm going to do this. And it's just going to work out, because what is the alternative? The alternative is I'm going to spend the rest of my life in silence. The alternative is I might tell some close people to me my story, which is okay if that's all you want to do. But then if you're like, but that's like, the surface. What I really want to be doing is really making some change out there. I really want to share my story and create some sort of social impact. I really want to launch a business. I really want to have the best family life. But in order to do all of that, I need to be authentic with myself and with the world. And I need to break away from how my family is and break that generational cycle. And, I shared this on social media today, that if you don't come from a supportive family, then you must make sure that a supportive family comes from you instead. You have to be that person. So, when it comes to sharing your story and you have that fear, cool, do it anyway, right? Because people need to hear your story, and you owe it to yourself. You owe it to your inner child. You owe it to your higher self as well, all right? So what else do you say? So I'm afraid of what people say, cool, specifically those who did the abuse and denied it. Okay, then with that specifically, it depends on how you're going to share your story. But there is always the option. You have to be careful. Listen, there are some. If nobody's been convicted, you don't want to go out and say, my uncle raped me, or if we're talking specifically abuse, like this story is, you don't want to go out and say, my uncle raped me. My uncle John raped me when I was 4, and he's still alive, and there's been no conviction or anything like that, and you're being public with it, because you will be fucked. Because he will not all the time, but a lot of the time. You don't want to bring shit on your doorstep when there's a right way and a wrong way of doing things. It's like, well, if you wanted to try and do some type of conviction, then there's a way to do that, right? It's going to the police, or going to a charity, which don't then go to the police, trying to go through it on that way. But you have to decide, okay, what's the end goal of me doing this? Okay, so if I'm afraid of what the abuser who's denied it is going to say when I share my story, then maybe if your objective isn't to out the abuser, but it's just to help other people, then it's like, well, share your story, but don't go into the specific details. Don't include family names, don't include titles, don't include the specifics of the location if that reveals who it is. Because people aren't listening to your story for the specifics in that way. They're just listening to your story because they want to know, they want to have a rough idea on what you went through, yes, because that's what creates relatability. But then they also want to know how you got to where you are today, because then that creates inspiration. Yeah. So that's my advice on that. And then I've started so many times with a book, and she doesn't know how to move forward. That's also a very common one. We do have a Powerful Books community. Up until this point, it was running as a publishing company, where it was £5,800 to work with us. We have our team. We take you through daily calls, coaching, everything to go from a blank page, get your story out, convert that into a book. Then our team, so our editor, our formatter, cover designer, comes in, takes care of all of that, and publishes a book under Powerful Books. But we recently made a massive change, and we've turned it now into a monthly subscription of $97. So it's like £70-80. And you get access to everything, but we then teach you how to self-publish a book, allowing us to provide that information from a hugely much cheaper cost. If you go and look at publishing companies out there, none of them really charge what we're doing at $97 a month. So that was our way of helping more people. So there is that option. That's the best advice that I can give you, because I will actually help you to get to the end point and publish a book. But as generic information now for you to go away and think about, and for any of you who've tried writing your story and you keep on hitting a brick wall, is because you've done the first thing, which is vomiting your story out onto paper, right? The act of vomiting it out, you finish vomiting, yeah? You will finish writing, you will hit a brick wall. And then you're like, okay, shit, where do I go from here? What do I do with this information I got on this piece of paper? The best thing for you to do, write this down, all right? It's just the same process that we go through inside our community. It's called the Powerful Story Framework. It's split into 3 parts. We have clarify your story, clarify your message, clarify your book structure. So with the story, all you're going to do is just start from the beginning. And we have in our actual, we've got 2 communities, Powerful Books community, and we've got the Be Powerful community, which is $10 a month. So it's very cheap, very affordable. And in there, you can learn exactly how to write out your story. So that's another option for you. But you basically want to start writing out your story, starting from childhood. Just go from your earliest memory and then just write up until where you are today. It's as simple as that, okay? We have loads of questions, but I don't want to go into those now just because of how long this video would end up becoming. But you want to go from childhood all the way through to where you are now, all right? There's no right or wrong way of doing this. Just write out your story. Then you want to look at what you've written, like, okay, what is the message that's in this story? What's the message that I can pull out of this? And then from there, now you've got the story, now you've got the message that's been born from that as to why you're here today. And then it's like, okay, cool. So what is the book structure? Like, how do I want this book to come across? Is it going to be a memoir? Is it going to be a memoir/guide? What's it going to look like? Is it going to be split into parts, part 1, part 2, part 3? If you need, inspiration, have a look at books on your bookshelf and just see how they're laid out. And then it's like, okay, what sort of chapter is going to be in my book? What is not necessarily the name of each chapter, but what's each chapter going to be about? Like, what's the message of each chapter? Once you've gone through that, you now have a process to follow. Then you can start writing your draft. The problem is those people start writing without any structural framework in place. Of course, they're not going to get to the finish point. They will hit a dead end every time because they don't have a clear path to follow. With that framework, then you have a clear path. All right. So I hope that helps. But if any of you are watching this and you're like, I want to get my story out there, I want to help other people, I hope this video helped. Bottom line is that there's always going to be fear. But fear is not a good enough reason for you to not use your voice and project it out there into the world. Because this world needs it. There's too many people living in silence. There's too many people suffering in pain. And it's people like me, you, and other people in that community, right, who are collectively grouping together to make this world a better place by using our story, using our voice, using the chapters of the history that we've lived to now help other people too. You got this. You can do it. 100%. You got this.